If you're crowded, Raj, you can sit by me.
Yeah.
You can.
It's okay.
He'd rather be crowded.
Two tough people right there.
Domino touches here, but that's it.
It's more a matter of who you get to sit by.
Yeah, wherever you go. That's why I put sitting next to me. I said, I'll take it.
The camera was on the speed.
Was it really?
Yeah, don't sit by me. Okay, good point.
No offense.
No, that's really smart, yeah. Oh, dear.
Okay, go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education work session/board meeting for Monday, October 10th to order. First action item on the agenda is the approval of bills in the amount of $2,493,747.28. Board Member Fox. Seconded by Board Member Waddell. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is personnel transactions. We usually have those up under one consent agenda line, don't we?
Yes.
Since we've been at work session, these times for me.
Individually? Okay.
We can do that.
One, to make mention of any personal transactions, Lee Kepper at Roosevelt, his retirement this year, so appreciate everything he's done for the district.
And it is really nice that he's giving us that notice well in advance to give us plenty of time to end up work from that.
Accept the personal transaction.
Personnel.
Yeah. Entertain a motion to accept the personal transaction.
I move to accept the personnel transactions.
Moved by Board Member Waddell,
Second.
seconded by Board Member Lang. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the authorization for to make Commerce Bank payments to Glassman Corporation in the amount of $75,873.62.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Waddell. Seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion?
We have an answer behind you.
That's just, I thought I saw your figure.
Okay.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. And last item for approval is the ratification of the 2016-17 negotiated
can do you can act on it tonight. I mean, or you can wait to the next meeting. I know it was late you getting some of that information, but that's a question. I wanted it there in case you wanted to go ahead and act on it. Nothing will change with it, so.
Moved by Board Member Rankin. Second. Seconded by Board Member Waddell. Open it up for discussion. And as I said, really the only thing that has changed since last time we talked was I think we had proposed 7, I think.
Yes.
Was it? And they came, I think we ended up, we basically met in the middle at 6.
Now
So they came back to 5.
Yeah, and the other item that was brought up, they had asked, or I don't know, somewhere in the discussion, I am meeting with Kim and Kathy next week and start our discussion about the possibility of how a salary schedule could perhaps change to assist that group. They were kind of fighting for this particular time and put them at the head of being considered for this next year. So the front end of that discussion will be next week, and we'll do some brainstorming then. Just want you to know that there is a a date and time that's scheduled, and we are starting that discussion already.
And what's nice about electing tonight is we can send contracts
Yeah.
out, and everything has been kind of on hold, so it'd be nice to complete that process.
A little sooner than last year.
Yeah, I just signed last year's contract.
Sorry, I know, I'm just saying. Better?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, next item on the agenda is the Ace High School roof storm repair bid. John, or no, I'm sorry, yeah, John.
Yeah, I was. Rusty will be here next meeting if there's any questions whatsoever. I'm really here to answer any questions you might have on this particular, on the bid for the storm damage piece. And I know it confused me at that front end because it is adjacent to the other piece that was worked on. So it's really, really strange, and that's where I was embarrassed the last time when I was speaking on the wrong piece of roof. But it's on the high school. It's we're looking at basically the same kind of roof to put in that particular area, and I guess questions you end up having with it. Now, it is still a little up in the air. I still had not heard completely about insurance. I mean, as far as we do know that they're involved in that part of it, but last time I talked to Rusty, still there was that bit of a, well, I guess we have to end up getting to the point of making a decision of which route we're going to go and what we're going to spend on it, and then it identifies what the insurance is going to completely cover at that time.
Did we get quite a bit?
But insurance hasn't released a claim on this?
Yes, they have.
They have?
Questions on it. I do want to bring up something else if, while you're thinking if there's any questions, okay? While you're considering if there's questions, I want to bring up, Rusty talked to me last week, and I know it's not going to be an item necessarily that is a board item, but I wanted in the work session for it to be upfront and all of you to know of it. 2 years ago, the roof was done on this building and on West Side, okay? He said that 2 years ago, when the roof was done on these those two roofs, they were in such poor shape. It was an old roof. They had gravel on it. I've not been on it. I don't know exactly the description, but he tried to find the cheapest method, the least expensive method to try to end up keeping it from leaking, okay? which really was interesting as far as how he said that they pulled all the gravel to the side, they put another layer. Really sound like a Band-Aid project, you know, instead of really coming in. But the intent was they didn't want to put much money in this building at this time. To this date, it's still working well. I mean, it is a 10-year warranty that was given for those two roofs, so that's good. But we have another spot, and they've been dealing with it, and he's just questioning whether or not it needs to be continued to be put up with, and that's a section of the maintenance building. It's over in between West Side and then the back structure. It's not a very big piece. It's definitely less than, probably be, he was guessing around $15,000 is what he was guessing it would be. He did go ahead and went to the two companies that in town that's always bidding and asked quotes. So he didn't ask bids, he just asked a quote of what they would be. And they did come in that area of somewhere in between 13, 17,000. It was in that neighborhood. Looking at the same kind of fix as the other was done. And so he's throwing it out there and is interested in that process. From what I gather in his description of the leaks that are happening there, it does sound like it's the same kind of problem that earlier existed 2 years ago. And it may be something that we really do need to follow up on. It's, again, not over the 20,000, but if it comes through and you see that as one of the expenses that was paid, I want you to know that's what's happening. It's, that's where it's coming from.
I don't know what they did.
But they, again, I know they gave the 10-year, so
Oh.
there is a 10-year warranty on it, which isn't that great, but it's still a 10-year warranty for the project they're doing.
Are those leaks, stores, equipment, and whatnot over there?
Yeah, but it's not that back area. It's not where the storage is. It's the other piece, but it was when we had the big rain again a week, 2 weeks ago, whenever, definitely once again it's kind of funny when it rains, all of a sudden people are aware of the roof needs at that point. So, that came up after it.
And because this was one of, we had the questioning on last time, I assume that this being expressed on the website as well.
This wasn't a bid.
No, the other one.
The other one,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
the roof.
Yes, yes.
And even though these are adjacent spots on the roof, it's awarded to a different company that's current work,
Well, actually, I think one will be completed before the other one starts. I don't believe, and I asked him about that. Even if the same one would get the same company would get awarded, the way things are, they may still, well, actually, they're out there in staging anyway, I think. So what I'm saying is one will be done. It'll be done before the other one is ready to be done anyway, so.
No further questions, Rusty, if you will be here next week. Next up on the agenda is transportation purchase. I think Russ is here to share some stuff on buses.
Good evening. Each fall, I kind of come to the board and ask to upgrade some of our aging fleet. And 3 years ago, the board had asked me to put together certain attachments that would help discuss some of our fleet. And Mrs. Dinkle has those up there. The first one is, this is all of the buses that we have. And on the left, you've seen this a few years, left is retirement year, and retirement year means the state says we can have that bus in service for 25 years. After that, we have to take it out of service. So that's why that column is there. And just kind of goes across, tells you what type of bus it is, what year it is, our bus number, and the mileage that was on that bus beginning of the school year. So this kind of gives you a quick snapshot of all the buses and that we have there. So any questions on that last slide? The next slide is our vehicles, Suburbans, cars. The top grouping there is basically a lot of our Suburbans that we use for out of town, for in-services, sporting events are used for that. The second column is kind of a couple of vehicles we use mainly in town because they're getting older. And then the third group, the blue, is our 3 cars that we use a lot for in-service for teachers and superintendents and principals to use to go out of town. And then the very last grouping at the bottom is other vehicles that we have throughout the district. The middle school has a maintenance Suburban. Rusty has a Durango that he uses, and Early Childhood Connection has some vehicles that they keep at their place. Helping Hands, we use one for a mail run, and Hayes High has a vehicle to go to all the sporting events. So that's just kind of a grouping of everything except maintenance and their pickups. We do not keep those on this list. So as we purchase like Suburbans, they'll go to the top, and then the top kind of rotates down to the bottom, and then we get towards the bottom, they're pretty well shot, and we sell them on Purple Wave at that point. So that's all of our other vehicles that we have that we use throughout the district that we're looking at updating.
So several of those never leave town.
The bottom part, those never do leave town. The top, the green at the top, those leave town, and the cars will leave town. Those two.
Work study?
The work studies, like we run special needs students around town for work studies to
So they don't
businesses.
leave town.
So we don't typically leave town with them, no. Any questions on that slide? Okay. The next one is what you guys kind of asked for 3 years ago, was the 5-year plan. The top is cars and Suburbans, and kind of each year what we're looking to buy to replace our fleet. And then we get down on the bottom side is the buses, and the next 5 years what we feel our needs are going to be, and that's always subject to change if a certain bus breaks down or something, you know, or we had a Suburban hit a deer last year, kind of changed our, you know, our needs a little bit. So that's what we're looking at for the next 5 years of car Suburbans or route buses, activity buses, or wheelchair buses. So, and I think it's been very helpful to have that out. Kind of gives us a good snapshot of what we need to replace. So.
Looks like really spread out now, it's not a whole boatload of
Yeah,
time
we've made great success in the last several years, getting equipment, getting rid of some older equipment, and it's really made a big difference. So, any questions on that slide? Okay. The last slide is what we're looking for. We're looking at purchasing 2 Suburbans for $77,000, and then looking at buying 1 route bus at $90,000 and a wheelchair bus at $96,000 for a total of $265,525.50. And our budget is $304,000, so we're way under our budget this year. All of our pricing comes from the Kansas State vehicle purchase, and then they also have a bus contract that I've used the last couple of years. So we just plug all the information in. It gives all 3 prices of the 3 major bus carriers, and both of those buses are on the low of all 3 bids, so on both those buses there. It's called Midwest Transit, which is an international bus. These are new buses, yes. Suburbans would be new, yes.
We'd just be retiring a couple of buses that are on that list.
That one was at the very top of that list. It broke down right after school. It's that very top one. It's 21 years old. The steering column went out of it, and they don't even make parts for them anymore. And that's what we kind of get into. They get that old that we can't even buy parts for them. We couldn't even really find used parts for it, so we decided we're just going to have to, you know, consider it dead, and we'll put it on Purple Wave here next few months. So yeah, that'll be the bus that we'll have to get rid of, you know. And then once we get a couple Suburbans in, we'll move some Suburbans down and get rid of a couple more vehicles that are on the bottom side of that.
The one, the retirement year for 2021, the next one, that we can hold on to that one for a couple of years.
That is
buying the second bus.
that is a spare wheelchair bus.
Oh, okay.
So I am looking at buying another wheelchair bus right now. We have 3 routes for wheelchairs, and I have 1 spare. And our spare is getting pretty bad, so it needs replaced. And then the other one that I'm wanting to put into a spare, it's starting to have a few issues. So, but we need to have, since we have 3 routes, we need 1 as a spare also, just in case one goes down or something.
When these vehicles go on to Purple Way, do you ever hear what kind of numbers, I mean, from past experience where I was at, the numbers is very minute. There's not much.
There's not a whole lot of
used up
money,
vehicles.
and the ones that we typically have been selling over the past couple of years have been pretty well worn out. You know, we're lucky to get $5,000-$6,000 out of some of them, you know.
Okay.
But it is money that gets come back into, I think we put it back into capital outlay,
And
so.
Purple Wave has worked well.
Yes, it's been a great, it's
Okay.
multi-state, and we get a lot of people see it, and I feel it's better than any other option that we really have.
Okay.
So, yes.
Any other questions for Russ? So Russ, then, the next meeting, you'll be asking for approval for the $265,525 for the 2 Suburbans and 2
Correct, yes.
And when that happens, how much time is it usually before they're even part of the fleet?
Yeah, typically, each year, they get price increases throughout, and November 1st is when the next price increase, so at the next meeting, as soon as, if you pass it, I'll be ordering the next couple days to get into that October deadline. If not, they said it could go up 4 to 5% on the buses, so yeah, if you approve it, that
8 weeks for
or
them.
so to get those in, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. I'm sure you can use that money elsewhere.
Any other questions for Russ?
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the September 20th enrollment.
The numbers, I know that this is not an item that, in many ways, it doesn't have the same meaning as it did 2 years, 3, 4 years ago. But I think in another year or two, it's going to have great meaning again, because I think the numbers are going to be very much tied to finance that comes to the different schools. But looking at this, I want everybody to know that InfoSnap enrollment, the difference in those numbers of that and then the SO66 enrollment, I want you aware that the InfoSnap numbers was in August. Okay, those were August numbers, really using information at that time of what we thought we had of coming in. Now, it's really, and I had to check today just because of the coincidence. The coincidence is the difference on the right, it could be plus or it could be minus. Okay, and they're all minus except for the three zeros, which really is odd because you really, I had to check and just see why would that happen, and the only answer I get is it's just coincidence. Because there's ups and downs from, I mean, there's people that come and go in that time, but the numbers that we're working off of now with the SO66 would indicate that that's the real numbers. But I want everybody to be aware of this. The real number still is 60 plus more kids than what we had last year, okay? You may look at that and go, well, there's 40 less children. The difference is that adds up to 40 less. Well, at one point, we thought it was a little over 100, perhaps, more kids in the district. Okay, well, it's not a little over 100, it's a little over 60. You know, it's 60-some students is what it is. So numbers are good. I mean, it does look promising, you know, for this next year. I don't know what more to talk on because it's not tied to really anything but historical information, you know, going into this next year. But, yes, Paul?
What's SO66?
It is, I'd say, one of the main reports that has to be turned into the state that has all the different information of identifying your personnel, your number of students. It links in the building reports as well, and sends it all to the state.
It's basically what we used to do our PNRL collection instead of the enrollment collection, and this is the information the auditor would look at, and for years, we've just made improvements based on our process, like in transportation, where we used to count miles, we've got a better system every year, so it's been kind of nice not to have the stress of finances the last 2 years, so hopefully we've kind of polished our process so that if that kind of formula comes back, you know, we're ready and we don't have any kind
doesn't include Holy Family.
It doesn't?
No, Amy told me that. It does
Okay.
not include Holy
So that
Family.
would be more just.
Yeah. But, and those aren't whole numbers, you know, those are partial numbers that add up there. With this,
So, you'll look at something that was all about right?
Right.
Okay, so is that what this is, or is it actual heads?
Yeah, is this head count?
I'm sorry?
It's full-time equivalent.
It is, okay.
Or is this head count? That
No,
is
this-
the number of students, isn't it?
It's full-time equivalent because I believe kindergarten is only
Right. Well,
Right, but this would be
we
head
end up
count.
having
Yeah,
the full number of
250.
kindergartners here, 250. So this is not calculating what it would be that when you multiply it by your $3,700, $3,800. This is not that final number that you would multiply by it. That's what you're asking.
Yes, that's what I was asking. And then my second question, they still do the audit, right? This year,
Yes.
This last year, and we were off again. Did we use that information? This number, I can't remember why we were off. It was kind of mileage the year before, right?
We went, yes, and we went back to the auditor. We'll make sure when the auditor comes this year, we don't get as thorough of information since they're not sending it to the state for the funding. But one of the things last year, if you remember, was some Holy Family students wanted to use Lexia, which is a reading intervention program. So they enrolled through a virtual program outside, and we had Lexia, but they didn't. We hadn't communicated, or they didn't know we did. So we have those students now enrolled in our schools in that reading intervention program. But that was where I remember when we looked at the audit report, seemed to be the largest number that we missed out on.
But
That's been corrected.
Yes, that has
Mileage
been.
piece is in
Has,
the
right.
Okay,
So we hope,
yes, Russ?
We did purchase a transportation program a couple of years ago too, so we're more exact on that too. So that hasn't been part of the new funding, but, you know, we have had a couple of years now, so we've got a couple of years of data to look at that.
Yep.
So I think we're a lot more accurate on the mileage part than we have in the previous years.
Sarah brings up a very good point, and I want all the board members to know this. When you're talking about the auditor, you want to make sure you're doing your numbers just as accurately as you possibly can at the beginning of the year. Because you end up going, it doesn't matter if we get too many kids, we'll just get more money. Well, budgeting, that really isn't good, because basically, yes, but then an auditor comes in and that money is still, you don't get it. I mean, it ends up, you want to have the right number at the beginning of the year, so you end up getting every dollar you possibly can without the problem a year, 6 months later, them holding back or taking back any money at all. So this really is very important. It's odd that it hasn't been the last 2 years, because those who have been in this process, this is count, make sure, check again. You want it to the half kid count, when you're multiplying it out. But I can guarantee you, especially a district this size and the number of buildings, it is reasonable that you're going to end up missing here and there. And there's, I would say every year there was numbers, whether it was maybe some busing numbers, whether it ended up being special ed numbers, whether it was, but I don't know if there's any district that ever is getting that number perfect, when we.
We had the 1 year where we were off, we had quite a number of instances, but we were off by a ways.
Yeah.
I know we were off 16,000 in the spend. 16,000 is common, but because.
Dollar?
Yeah, yeah. And what you do is like May, you estimate Paris hours. You don't have option of like putting the thing. So a lot of things are estimation. When you do estimation, you're going to be off with it. So 16,000, I mean, I have seen maybe this number.
Got a couple questions about this. With the 60, what do we attribute that true growth number?
With
Was it
what?
just The 60 plus, was that expected in the population trends?
Yes. I mean, at least I understood that when I came in. I don't remember if it was Dean or someone else,
That
but
was in the deals they
Yeah.
showed.
I was with the understanding we're going to see some growth. Yeah.
At what point does that growth prove to be a challenge in terms of available classroom
Well, that's what we're gonna work on in just a little bit with our objectives and goals, yeah.
Right now, the elementary level wouldn't take much to do that.
That's kind of where we're looking at.
That's exactly right. We're using that data to make, yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the Hayes High School HVAC RFP.
I wanted you to know, I didn't send this out. I did let you know that there was, we did employ integrated consulting engineers. So there's an engineer that was hired to end up putting together, and this is the contract for them. And really, I think a pretty reasonable amount compared to what I heard compared to an earlier time when we had engineer. I think it was $3,000 that was spent for their service to come in, and they've been here a couple times. He had created, has a rough draft, well, I say rough draft, it should be completed at this time. The one you have that was sent to you, well, the one that's up there, was altered even this morning. And I think it's ready. But what we wanted to do was get it in your hands so you could look it over from now till the next board meeting. And Rusty will be here, and the engineer, Dwayne, will be here as well and try to answer any questions. Please understand, this RFP can be changed. You know, whatever was put together here is something that we want to work from, not just from the standpoint of that being the document that we're then going out to see who might be interested in doing the overall planning for the project for the high school. Whether it's done next year or the year after, it doesn't press any of us to say it has to be done this summer, okay? But it does still allow us the time frame that it could be done next summer, okay? So that's why, if anybody's questioning why is this being done seemingly kind of fast right now, well, so you have an option at least. You know, the option is there if we want to go ahead and do that. In the reading, it does end up speaking about a tool, you know, and that tool is what we talked about before, having that ability to look 10 years, 20 years down the road and use data to make determination of not just HVAC systems, but any part of facilities, so trying to make decisions with it, which can be very helpful in several different ways. Probably in short time, within a year or two, we would be able to use that. The other piece that it identifies, if you look closely, is that it identifies the plan, identifying or understanding that at one time we were talking about this could be a 3-year plan. You know, it could be a 1-year plan of it could be 3 summers of trying to get this done at the high school. And there is a time frame, if you read through it, that identifies even 5 years. Okay? In 3 years, it could be, it gives you the option to end up extending it if need be. But there's some reason why there's a longer time frame there than saying 1 year. You know, it's reasonable that it is longer than probably a couple years. And we will get into that as to the benefits and problems with that as we dig further and start really talking about that project at the high school, of whether it be a 1-year project, a 2-year, or 3-year, and whether we start a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. But the main reason why it's in front of you right now is that you have it, you can read through it, you can have the questions ready, you can ask them tomorrow or next week. Whether they're with Rusty, with myself, we have time to then contact Dwayne and get really good answers for you, even prior to, or make sure that it's explained as well as possible at the next board meeting.
And he will be going over what all is being replaced and so on and so forth, which is part of that. Kind of like they share.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I mean, that's where the dollar figure of going, of going through and trying to analyze what needs to be done And that was where we were a little concerned that when it's switched out, we want that system to be switched out completely, where there's not one piece that's still 36 years old and dependent upon it when everything else is new. It needs to be a new system completely. That's what we've talked about.
So John, on one of the pages, it talks about pre-proposal questions, set for November 1st.
Okay. The timeline was put there, and he explained it. He put a timeline once again, not because it's set, it's because those are board meetings. He looked at, Dwayne looked at our scheduled board meetings and just put it there so that it was a possible, just a possible schedule that it still could end up working. So, again, yes, but he was just working, and he wanted me to know that he's not being so bold as to say that that's part of that board meeting, and we're going to have a meeting then. He's just saying that it could be.
And will you guys that work through that answer those questions?
Yes.
So that's part of the services that we're being.
And I know there's going to be more questions. And that's kind of odd, because here's our work session, and I'm sorry, it's one of those where this is work session, but sometimes you get information, and we do need to, have time to read it, go over it, ask questions, and if we can feel good with Dwayne being here and Rusty as well at the next meeting, maybe, it'll just make it as smooth as possible in knowing which way to go with it.
So what action will we be taking at that meeting?
Well, if everybody is agreeable to that RFP, if your questions were answered and things seems reasonable, the next step would be to send that out to publicize it and end up, in essence, get individuals who have interest.
So, but at that meeting, are we making a motion and approving to authorize the issuance of that RFP or?
The issuance of the RFP,
Okay.
not about hiring anybody, just a matter of, it's like bids going out. You're just giving the authority for bids to go out, and basically, let's see what comes in, and,
But is that something we're formally have to take action on?
you need to.
Okay.
It needs to be board-driven, yeah.
Or if we think it needs to be revised, then we would
Oh, yeah.
discuss and move that, whatever revisions are.
The-
And that way
And I'm trying to make sure everybody understands, this is big. I mean, this really is. I know that the middle school was a big project, and I know that was a great stepping stone because it was successful. But this one is really a very big step for us, because within that RFP is something that didn't exist before, and that was trying to end up having the tools and the planning, not just for the high schools heating and air, but the heating and air for the district over the next number of years. You see, that it ends up being a bigger project, and if anybody's questioning you, this RFP doesn't have anything to do with roofs, floors, doors, anything else. This is dealing with HVAC systems of Hayes School District. And the first one that's being focused on is the high school.
The other thing I had down too, and I think it's something that was brought up last meeting, the meeting before, will Tracy also have the information as far as, obviously funding, and that one of the things we was talking about was, how many loans we have outstanding, and
The number's crazy. I do have the number. Did you get it?
No.
I think it was like 45 million for Hayes, and we have 2. And so it's like, when would we ever get to that amount? So the answer is not a matter of what's legal. It's more a matter of what's just smart. It's just a matter of good decision-making there. So on a legal answer, we're just fine, okay? It's more a matter of just making that decision as to, yeah.
any other questions for us? Okay. Item on the agenda is the CMAR, or Construction Management at Risk. I think this is more than anything, just to kind of get discussion talked about. We've all obviously discussed this in relation to the
Right.
bond stuff before, and in moving forward,
Well, this was part of your packet a year ago. Okay, so you've seen this. It's been presented, not that I remember or know who it was that presented it. Does anybody?
I think it was Apples,
Okay.
Rock Fair.
Okay, so it was a company that does provide that service. And they could very well be one of the possible ones that's chosen in the future. But this is, if you read through it, it's not focused at all with that company. It's
No,
just
you said it
definitely,
was completely generic.
yeah, it's generic whenever you read through it. But the issue that, there's no question from what I gather of the board wants this. We're going to do this. The question probably is more a matter of, okay, we're in process of even a special board meeting on Monday to look at 3 different architectural firms. The question I would have of the board, which has not been asked, is the time frame. And I know lots of things are happening. It's kind of, but should I use this week, early next week, of start investigating and identifying again 3 or 4 companies to look at, interview, much the same way with the architectural firms. And if you're in agreement to that, then that really would be a task I would take and try to arrange just to keep it moving. We would not, it's not again trying to say we'll turn around and hire, that our intent is to hire as soon as those interviews are over. But at least we have that work. We're doing some work as it's going along. And if we get to a point where things are coming together, we don't have to say, oh, wait, we have not done this piece, and we've got to wait to try to end up for that to catch up with other pieces.
Several times last time, so I think it's good to have everything all together.
Okay.
That way, if we get to that and we make a decision, everybody has the information. We're not having to go back and wait for people to come do things.
I want to make sure, too, that everybody is hearing the same thing, too. It is possible, this could be a very big project. I mean, whether we're talking about what was proposed for the bond election earlier, or what the next one may be. They may look identical or very similar, they may be different, but I'm still saying it may be sizable. And and because of sizable, I'm not just talking about sizable of a new facility. Sizable also can be that sizable when it's in many different locations, okay? Now that can be even more sizable than the idea of just one big building, okay? Different locations, and the last one was sizable because it was touching every building. It was involved, it was very involved. When you're talking about this particular project or this particular company, this company can be involved in providing more service than just that construction manager at risk, okay? But their job is to end up overseeing, and the intent that we would be pushing with them, no matter who they are, is to first consider the possibility of locals being involved in some way of helping with this project. We may have locals that can't do this, okay? But they can still be part of the project. And we have every intention of doing that.
I think it was also mentioned that they would also work with the architects as far as to streamline things and keep it as efficient as possible, so.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions on that? Next item on the agenda is student fees.
One of the objectives that was identified, actually when we were working on goals, it was one of the goals, and we that got converted into an objective. But I would say that it's a very good one to be looking at, probably no different than maybe that consideration of the buildings when you're looking at how much money PTA or schools, home and school, end up putting into particular projects for our schools, for our buildings. But I want you to see the numbers are significant. when you see the workbook material and it's $135, yes, that's a lot of money that's being put in there, but it definitely has been very well used because it goes in, for the first one, largely textbooks. And not that it can't be done, because my conversation with Tracy is very open to this. It's just a matter of taking our budget and changing it, of moving money so that we end up where money has been. We've got to move it to maybe textbooks. Money's coming out of general fund, and general fund is going to be putting in some of that into textbooks every year instead of relying upon that being fees. Because largely, we kind of rely on fees for all of that, or?
Well, I think most of the things go directly to what were general fund line items, classroom supply, principal, all the buildings, and then typically, it's not covered there, it goes into what we start with textbook.
For the
fund,
textbook, yeah.
Because we got, fund one, and a lot of that, you saw that this past year when we purchased the classroom materials. We, I think the next purchase or thing we need to look at is elementary math, Go Math series, which is good. I'm sticking with that, but when you purchase the series, you get the consumables and some of the resources for the life of the textbook, which typically is 6 years. We're in our 6th year of that, so we're trying to get some prices and quotes for that. So those are things that we just need to make sure we have for, to be able to purchase those.
And if we can, there was, I don't remember who had asked that. One of you had asked the possibility of even curricular materials being something that has some kind of a solid number. And we, on a year-to-year basis, much like the buses, like technology, like even what we were trying to do with facilities, it would be helpful. And we do end up knowing that there is a number every year that goes into that. We need to end up trying to have a plan that guesses that just as well as we possibly can, and then try to end up making sure there's definitely money there for it. When you're looking at the rest of these, kindergarten, technology, we said we were going to look at this and start the process of deciding what, if we were going to change the fees. Please, everybody understand this. We have a public that knows what the fees are. They paid these 2 years ago, last year, this year, just 3 years, I think. So 3 years, they're familiar with it. Okay, they don't like it, it's too much, but they're familiar with it. What we need to do is have, if we make a decision, and we make it in the next month, 2 months, that's great. We're going to try to make sure that, once again, they end up knowing full well the changes before we get to the end of the year, so they're very familiar with it going into that. Plus, it gives us the planning of saying, okay, we're going to cut the fees, workbook material from 135, we're going to cut it in half, because that's just what we want to do. That's fine, but it does mean that we've got to also consider $133,000. Where are we going to pull from that, perhaps, and put into, well, and I hate to say this, I never did send this out to all the board, but Tracy came to me at the end of last week because she had just gotten the information on the retirees increase for health insurance. We didn't have that beforehand, and it was $500 and some last year. It's $900 and some this year. It went up $400, and again, you multiply, that's per month, so you multiply that out, and we do have, because of that process of people stepping out, there are some that, this is what's bad for some, that means that they have to pay that extra $400. What's bad for us is there's still 3 or 4 years there of individuals that we're paying that total amount. So you have that on top of it that's coming, that we're going to be pulling somewhere from our budget to try to cover that for those retirees this coming year.
And do we have any dollar figures tied to any of that, or is it just
for those, yeah, for those 3 or 4 years, we cover it completely. It's not controlled by number of dollars. Now, all the others after that, it is. It's identified, you pay above the 500, the 400, the 300, it has it written out that it actually marks that amount, that anything over this amount, they will pay. But no, for theirs, like I said, for 3 years or so, it's, I think she had calculated over the next 3 years. Tracy's gone today. So what she showed me last week, I should have just taken from her, and I didn't. But I'm sure it was $200 and some thousand over the next 3 years. That's just this project. That wasn't even considered. No, over the 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm
That's just for the increase this year.
Yeah. Am I, so you saw those numbers, am I somewhat close without having, okay. It was $200 and some thousand, I think, over,
I don't know that, I just know I had to contact several people that were looking at retiring or retired last year because they retired because of the insurance, and now they're paying more.
that's true. Actually, very good point. There are some individuals that instead of paying $400 more, may have other options they go with.
They might drop off.
And they may drop off because they have a better option.
And we might have that $575. I know last year we had a couple people that benefited, on the portal, and were able to get the cheaper, saying the 96. Well, this year they're paying almost $500, so I'm sure they're going to that one be able to get it cheaper. So when you do that portal, they
I know I got off track, forgive me, we're on student fees, but I'm just saying that with student fees, pulling back to that is just a matter that, yes, I'm open to changing that. It probably does need to be, but please keep in mind, in doing it, we gotta pull money from general fund. That's where it will come.
I would like to see the same Tracy, but I mean, because it's been, it's talked about when we first put it in originally, it was basically gonna be a one-year deal, reevaluate and see. I knew once it was put in, it would be a permanent thing, it would never get moved, but I would love to see us take something off of that work for the materials, and try to drop that a little bit.
And I'm sorry, I wanna go a little beyond that, because when you just told us, the high school is paying
Oh, yeah.
$251 or something.
That doesn't include the technology fee and the third.
Well, that wasn't.
No, I'm saying the work would be just $135 on top.
So can we make some proposals and then have someone try to see if we can make it work, or what's the best way to proceed on this?
She can find a balance point, can't she?
Actually, I'll work with Tracy, we'll come back at the next meeting, and we'll end up sharing a possibility. Okay? It's just a matter of saying, can we make anything work? Yeah. You could end up saying no fees, there's $423,000 that we're not gonna end up having the public pay at all. But it's just a matter, once again, saying, can we make it work? Of course we can, but it will end up having an effect somewhere else. I mean, I'm just certain that amount will have some effect.
Well, and I know probably somebody listening that is in one of these two categories is about to have a heart attack, but I would like us to also look at those activities at the high school and middle school. I know there's a lot that's going into that, but, we raised that year that we raised the workforce material fee was the year that we almost doubled those activities.
I can double almost all of this.
Well, I think the workforce, I think it was 135, and I think we bumped that up to whatever it was, 60.
It was well under 100, wasn't it originally? Yeah, it was like 60 or $65. Sorry, it was 60.
Okay, when we
Yeah.
started, but when I come on, it was already a one.
Yeah.
But I remember us double that activity.
I would ask this, before we break on this, and then it's a matter of me talking with Tracy and planning for the next meeting. Would it make sense that every one of those areas is reduced? In some, not focusing on one in particular, but looking at all of them to reduce every one of them? Is that a fair question?
I would say sure, but I
focus on the others, though.
The others, what did I
Okay.
remember?
But I'd also look at hearing from the principals how those fees are used and distributed. Because those do support a lot of, I know they support a lot of extra, art, co-curricular, as Marty might say. So
Okay.
before, I mean, there's the budget number, but then what's the impact on the quality of education? Are the opportunity for every student to participate in something? I would be curious about the other
I guess at
impacts
the end of
besides
the day-
No,
budget.
I know, I think we need to know exactly what these are funding,
Right.
you know, and if we find, if we reduce it, can we find that money elsewhere? If not, you know, what does it impact?
So
At
it's
the end of the day,
not-
I'd like to just see at least some steps taken to try to start chipping away at this a little bit. I mean, even if it has to happen over a couple of years, at least make an effort to try and start reducing
Okay.
some of
And
it.
to me, it's not so much individual fees, it's
No,
what can we transfer to cover, how much money, where can we balance? Then we look at that total deduction, and then we can apply it however we see fit.
Sure.
But it's not an individual fee necessarily, it's a big package.
Well, it is, but at the same point, just what comment about technology, there's a little bit more understanding of what that fee really is paying for, whereas the others is just a little bit more of a conglomerate there that's out there. But even so, with the conglomerate you're talking about, I know it may help in knowing what those items are, but in essence, that's not why we're here talking right now anyway. It's the amount. So even if you know, I mean, maybe that helps in some way to know what that is. I'm sorry, I don't think that really is the focus. The focus is, I don't care what the group is, the amount is, we still just want that less than what it is right now.
Well, and I think it goes hand in hand with what you were trying to do by looking at, like, the whole school review.
Right.
You know, just to make sure that we have the right, we're funding, the appropriate sources are funding, what they should be.
Sure.
And if not, then we look at some other outlets. Try. some other outlets.
Well, one of the items, we'll get to that too, it says, have a financial plan or design a financial plan, and that designing of a financial plan is this. You know, we're hitting all these different areas to in essence, come with a plan that really makes sense, that the public as well agrees with, that the board feels that we're really considering the public in the process, and we understand what our budget really is designed at the front end of the year to take care of these different items. So that at the end of the year, we've done as well as we possibly can and probably have as little transferring of money that's needed at that point, because we did a very good job. And I hate using the word guess, but a lot of it is guessing. You know, at the front end, you use the data that's solid, but there's a lot of other factors there that's just not real solid when you're working with school finance. So, okay, I know what to do in working with Tracy on this thing.
Questions on the student fees? Item on the agenda is the board objectives and time.
Okay. I don't know what others were, well, the first item was probably the work with the goals, the last meeting, thank you. One thing that I did realize, and you see a change there, I did not like goal 1, 2, 3. It sends the message that goal 1 is the top goal, and number 2 goal, and number 3 goal. I hope it's all right, but I'm going to be referencing A through E from now on. You say E, you don't have this immediate thinking, well, that's the low goal of number 5. You know, so that was one change. Another ends up being, if you look at B, I know we talked about it just a little bit, but we never did change it. Have is just the worst descriptor you can have, and I would love to have something else in place of it. So it's possible it could be design, but I'd go so far as to beg of you to put a different descriptor there than the word have. USD 489 will have a stable financial structure that allows the district to accomplish its educational mission. I just suggesting design, because it is that, it is a process of designing it over time, and that's kind of the conversation with Tracy is designing it. But we already approved goal changes. Here I'm asking once again if you would consider one more change and change that weak word have to design. Okay.
This time. Any more of this stuff, I don't know.
I'm not trying to wear it thin, but we're gonna work with this for like 5 years, and so I want something that we really like, that we feel we can live with at this point. And whether you're gonna act on this as a change today or 2 weeks from now, I don't care, but I just would like that changed if it's possible.
Well, I think to make it parallel with the rest, whatever verb we choose, we need to start the statement with that. Because USD 49 will is assumed in all
Right.
of them.
So
That
design,
needs to be added, but
design a stable financial.
Develop, whatever word you
Right.
use. And I don't know, can we take action now if it wasn't up in the action item?
Oh, no, it has to be part of
Since
that.
it's a work session?
next meeting.
Next board
Well, we can decide. Commit.
Okay. The next piece had to do, and the piece that really was for tonight, had to do with the objectives. You had many great ideas when we ended up having that special board meeting on Saturday, and we did work on goal setting. And there was many that was kept over, and then I tried to take all those and plug them into other areas so they just didn't disappear. I didn't throw away any of them. I then ended up asking administrators in buildings ideas that they had for objectives. I inserted them as well. So that's where we have these objectives underneath that list at this point. I do not, what I was hoping to do for tonight was more start the process. It ends up having a timeline with it, and I'll explain that as far as what we're trying to do, but get this so I can read it too a little closer. Okay, 4A, when we're talking about elevate standard of quality education, one under that is resources and training focused on best practices. And I would say, if you can see the link of how that links to possibly elevating the standard of quality education. Another one is stronger professional development. Would that link to making the standard of quality education greater in this district? Another link between social emotional development, academic development, and you can go and you can read through all of those and say, how does that tie to, that particular goal? If it doesn't, we need to scratch it off. If you feel like it's weak, it really doesn't play a part, we need to remove that from there. Nothing has been removed at this point from that first list that I ended up having. What I would like to do is work from the standpoint of looking at the ones that exist right now. A has 13. Others have much fewer than that, just to look at and try to say what is the merit of it, because others can be placed into it. One thing that's odd about this, everybody, is no work has been done looking at the goal and then trying to create an objective that links to it. I was just using objectives that had been identified, whether they're goals or just what administrators thought objectives our district should have, and then tried to link them to where they made more sense with the 5 goals that were set.
So you're saying under A, 1 through 13, those were either on our list
Yes.
as possible goals, or they came from the administrator?
Yes, and not with the understanding of what the 5 goals were that they were creating them. So some of them could be kind of weakly linked, that you kind of go, that really doesn't tie that well to it, because it never did. None of them really tied to it. That was never the intent. Some tie very, very well to it, as if that was the work that was done. What we want to do is go through, and we want to work, and I say we, because I want board to be involved in it as well as administration, okay? I don't want to belabor it, don't want to spend a whole lot of time but enough that you're involved in this process as well. Because in the end, we're going to end up having, a way in which, whether it's a timeline that I spoke of that looks like the one in the corner of 2016, 2017, 2018, and then identify where we're starting these particular projects, these particular objectives, you end up having a, I want to have something that's set with our, with the work we're going to do, that this plan identifies where we started it and then what our plan is of finishing it. Okay? And you can have that plan of the beginning and the end, and then as Sarah and I talked today, we also have to have another calendar we're working from where we really did succeed. We did, at a board meeting, successfully tend to that objective. Okay? I think this would end up giving a better view from the standpoint of anybody that walks into a school building. They have, and I put stars. That I don't think that's what we want to use. I put that just so you could kind of color code it. I think in a building they need to be able to read it. They need to know what that objective is. So trying to figure it out and put this objective started here, but in this case, January, one of these is 11. Integrate the digital learning plan. I put back in January because it was started even before January as far as integrating the digital learning plan. That could be one that's ongoing and is identified just by a couple times a year with board meetings that's addressing that. Another one that's listed, let's say, in November is, it's hard to see the little number on it, 2.
How about as fall as possible?
Create a continuous tech cycle for replacement and new equipment. So I put that star there, believing that Scott's going to come in, he's going to end up doing a presentation, he's going to, in November, have an idea of what those numbers are. This is where it started, and basically we may have a plan that is set somewhere in January, February of identifying that's what we're going to work from. Much like what Russ was able to create 2 years ago, we would have something that Scott has created, and we have that plan set here. But it would be nice if you can see this is what was started, this was what finished, and have a reasonable timeline as you're working through it to truly show we are working on each one of these goals, and these are the objectives that are being accomplished at that time. So I'm asking you to be patient with me of going through the ones that are listed and just give me a little direction to say, does it link or is it weak? Because if it's weak, it may be one we scratch. We will come back to it. We will work on this from the standpoint of saying we'll add to. We're not going to add any objectives today. All we're looking at them to say, are some of these that was put into it something that's weak enough that it doesn't fit there right now, or it should go somewhere else. So the first one was on we will elevate the standard of quality education. The first was resources and training focused on best practices. I know I'm looking for a lot of nods. We can have discussion on some, but there could be nods for most. Okay. Next is stronger professional development. Okay. Better link between social emotional development and academic development. And I think that was put in there because the state's pushing that really hard right now. The state really is pushing that social emotional, and how do we end up putting it in place while we're still doing the academic, trying to not make one more important than the other, but try to link them together.
Are you wanting to go over every one of them tonight?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Well, we can do it. It's only 2 pages.
Well, I know, but okay.
It gives, and I'm sorry, Josh, but it gives me, for me to end up saying the board has okayed this, I can then work with the admin and we can move with other ideas too.
We couldn't give an answer on Monday, because it's easier to be able to go back, read it, put it over in your head a few times, look at them, do they make sense, do they not make sense, kind of look at the bigger picture, rather than one at a time. I mean, I would imagine they're all gonna get approved tonight, to be honest with you.
No, they won't. I don't think so, Josh. I think there's a few that probably are weak enough, they probably would be scratched
Okay.
off. I think.
To me, I don't like the idea of not having time to prepare and read them all, and then make staff judgment decisions on something that's as important as this. I will
Okay.
go along with it, that's not the way I would prefer to do this, because once we agree on them, that's where we're moving forward, we're not coming back and making any changes, so to speak.
Well, and I am fine, Josh, if everybody wants to do this, as you're saying, as,
Because Monday, I think we could have an answer on,
yeah, but Monday, no, we're not, Monday specific. But that's,
Right.
it's just the
but I'm saying
architect.
on Monday, we can have an answer on which ones we think are weak, we could all put our own together, or we can go through them tonight, that's fine,
What if we go through them tonight,
that's fine.
but then if, after looking at them later, because you're right, we just start seeing this for the first time.
Right.
That we could have a revisit of some,
Sure.
is that okay?
Well, actually, I'm okay if you want to take it home as homework and email me the ones you think are weak. You know, I mean, I'm fine with that. If you guys all just would, but that, I really do want your feedback on that of just following up and telling me, please let me know which ones really are weak, so that we can,
But I like going through this tonight because I don't know, some of these I don't fully understand.
okay, for clarification.
And just clarification, also, like you just said, the state's pushing number 3.
You, yeah,
I was questioning number 3 just slightly, and it makes sense, it just doesn't seem like it's, so I needed to hear that.
Let's just go through.
okay. Number 4, monitor assessment results and make them known to all.
I don't think this fits.
Doesn't fit this one.
To me, it doesn't because it's, doesn't have anything to do with the action of elevating the standard. The assessment results are published everywhere, ASB, all the rest. It really falls to me under communication to make people aware of it, but I don't see it as
It
an
doesn't
action.
seem like we're doing, I mean, it just doesn't seem like you said, it's supporting us elevating.
Because we're just saying we're monitoring it, okay, now we're gonna make them know. That's a communication, it isn't say.
Okay.
So we need to clean that up, when we're trying to say we want to improve upon, we want to monitor the
It's just a
assessment
different-
results and make.
Oh, that's how I took it.
Oh,
But that's not the way it,
That's not how it reads,
it
but
reads,
that's,
I'm gonna monitor it, it doesn't say I'm gonna act
and
on
let
it.
people know what the results are.
okay. So really it needs, there's a question mark on it because it needs some altering
Needs
if
some
it's gonna
altering,
fit.
but
Okay.
because the way it reads now, it's communication is all it is. but
All right,
Acting upon those to target goals, that might be more.
all right. Increase preschool time to full day.
Isn't that mandatory?
Well, what's odd is, I think this came up, this was listed before that information came out, Mandy. You know, so it's, yeah, there's a very good point, Mandy. That's one that probably can be scratched off because it's gonna happen whether we have it as an objective or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it says.
Expand middle school science program.
I don't have a problem with the idea, but it's kind of it kind of hangs out there on its own.
Very specific compared to the broader.
So so many other things, so I guess I'm looking at it as yes, it's something that we say we want to do, but it's just very, like I said, it's very tightly focused on.
And some of the objectives you'll see end up being
I know, so.
almost like goals, and some objectives are really very, very tight and very narrow, and that, it clearly, if you tie it and say, does middle school science program being expanded elevate the standard of quality education?
Well, and to me, does it fall underneath increase more curriculum options? Which means looking at the whole curriculum. I would put middle school as one of those.
One of what?
So is it part of the
Subset.
Oh, one of 9.
just about a college prep curriculum, it's about a post-secondary curriculum, which means some of our options are pretty narrow at this point. That's where I'm looking at it from a bigger picture of where we'll need to move to.
I agree with you, and I'll add one piece though with it. It ends up being that almost in any district, when you end up doing this process, you have an area that, or an individual or a group of people that really want something that's better. Let's say that their theater program has shrunk and it's very weak, and that becomes an objective to build it back up, okay? Or it ends up being identified, it could be any particular area, and
Sure.
that is an objective to try to build up. So I follow it. I'll put just a mark by it as far as a question, and understand completely that it's one of many of the curricular items, but that was identified as being one that's viewed would strengthen our program if we ended up having stronger science at the middle school. So, okay.
Stronger just doesn't equate to
Expanding.
expanding curriculum.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
I don't see those two as the same.
Well, I should have said expand instead of
But I'm just
strong.
saying in general, retooling our middle school program, we're not necessarily offering more classes or
No.
more expanded curriculum. I don't see how I don't put those two together at all.
I understand.
But what's expanded middle school science? What's that mean? I don't know.
I don't know whose word was expand. I mean, the middle school science program is looked at. More engagement. Yeah, I mean, it's.
So maybe it's evaluate.
Well, it was, when I even went to the middle school at their, I don't remember, it was site council, if it was home of schools. But I was at one of those meetings, and just by chance, they had the robotics, and he was driving around the little robotic car, and the teacher was there, and I had brought up that in the work, because it was soon after our session on Saturday, and I brought up that was one of the goal objectives that was addressed, and the science teacher himself said that would be great. You see, because expand in his mind, when I said expand the middle school science program, I really think he was thinking that more money would go into that program for supplies, equipment, materials.
And the robotics of it is that, I'm not sure that's career and technical education, not even science.
No, it's usually done as an application.
It's, what you're talking about there, the program you're talking about is really technology and its exploration, it's not under the science.
I understand, but I said science.
Well, I know.
He
thought
knew,
would give the money,
okay.
But we say science, no.
But I know that's what he was thinking was equipment and materials and
We're in a loan process, university to help support that.
with that, yeah. So, okay. Next was recruit and retain teachers. Does that tie into elevate standard of quality education? Okay. Develop leaders, not managers. Does it fit there? Some of these may need circled of just saying, yet, like you said, loose, they don't even fit in that spot.
You know, that was mine, and that was more administrative. So, that's also a lot. I mean, I meant that to be as a goal.
Do you want like develop instructional leaders? Because then necessarily, just admin, we can have teacher leaders, but just focus on the instruction. I don't know, I want to change the word.
I think so, yeah.
So alter it as well. I'll write down alter, and if you just put instructional there, it would fit more in that spot. Increase more curricular options. We already talked a little bit on that, but that was, are there more classes? Are there more in different areas that should be offered that we're not offering? Are we,
I think maybe now it is to look at the different pathways that we need to be considering
okay.
for quality, and it's looking at preparing students for post-secondary options. still is fairly aligned to the four-year degree. Is that what we're hearing from KSD and the commission?
Okay, I'll write down pathways with the question mark there,
Yeah.
because that definitely is more specific than just
It is
curricular
much
options.
more, but once if we invest more in the CT pathway, I think different places that do it, it does offer, expands our offering.
Okay.
Our student choice prepare for the post-secondary life,
Okay.
which has to do with quality education.
Focus on improving student performance on the ACT assessment.
Well, now that we've cleaned up number 4, is that that's not enough?
I think that
Do they tie together?
Well, maybe CT gives a specific assessment, and if we clean up number 4.
I'll tie it.
It's not just communicating it, monitoring it, but it's.
And let me ask the question, will we continue to get state assessments? Will they be changing it?
We
There-
will have a building report card here in November.
And so that's a fairly good indicator. I'm asking the question.
You know, it will be another baseline, and it will be, yeah, it could be used as an indicator. I mean, we need to definitely look at it, it's aligned with the curriculum.
And it's part of what would be required for KISA, as well with the state assessments.
Results is one of the 4 Rs,
Yeah.
and we get to decide those probably aligned with what our goals are.
Okay. So it's maybe, ACT may be too specific where it could be. And do we have internal assessments that we're putting into part of the KISA process too?
Yeah, but you could
Well, I'm just saying,
tie those
We want to look
together.
at all that together. That's
Right.
what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
we
say.
might
is
just
You
that-
say
could
assessments in general.
roll those
And
together.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
suggesting, is we have multiple assessments,
All right.
all of which measure in different
Right,
ways.
instead of listing of separate.
Yeah, we have the star, that we
Right.
So looking at, it's a
Okay.
multi-dimensional look at student growth and student performance, that's where we do want to roll it together, because it may give a fuller picture of the
Yeah.
student, not just a one-point measure, which is always suspect.
All right.
Fine. I'll stop.
Integrate
Yeah, local
the-
measures
Good,
too.
actually, look at the middle,
Local
look at the
measures as well, yeah.
Give them the big schools to.
Yeah, benchmarks, yeah.
Integrate the digital learning plan. We're in that part, okay. Grow our sports programs.
Well, if there is some research linked to strong athletic extracurriculars do relate to strong performance of students.
Right.
And so, if we don't have a strong, I don't know how it's correlational or not, but there is a connection between student engagement in sports and academic performance.
Right.
So it does have a quality of the education. So I think it's
Okay.
fine.
Is growing to get more kids involved, because I think we offer just about, just we could do a little bit.
Well, and that's a
Some of
good
those other
point.
programs, maybe that would, I guess, entice a different group of kids, but.
Are we talking sports programs? Does that include intramural type activities?
I mean, when these are said, it can tie,
So we
this
could
is
look
right
at-
on the onset to say how it could be the quality and the competition. It could end up being the numbers. It could be the number of different sporting events that exist. It could be modified a little bit to not just be sports, but extracurricular activities. You could tie it in many different ways as to how, but there is no doubt, Paul, what you said is correct. There is plenty that indicates that students who are active do better with their grades as well.
Right.
Yeah. So,
I think if we're gonna have programs, then we are obligated to maximize our potential in those programs.
so it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's science Olympiad or football or
But
wrestling.
Right.
any program that we're gonna have, our obligation is to do it as well.
As well as possible.
Role doesn't say academic
It does
either.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
Yeah,
That's true.
I know that's the emphasis that we're thinking, but that's, everything Paul's talking about too, is, creating a well-rounded individual, and those surveys and stuff we get back, that's typically what the general public is wanting more in the education world, right?
Because of the co-curricular things you learned about working groups, the soft skills.
Yeah.
That,
Right.
and again, back to the road stand soft skills come up pretty high, and as a state, we haven't done an exceptionally good job. As a state, not just our district, but as a whole state.
Right.
So is it sports or extracurricular? Is there a difference?
Well, I'm not, no,
Well-
I'm not gonna work on that.
Yeah, don't
We're
worry.
not gonna,
Marty-
we're just saying it
Marty-
stays,
Yeah.
and this is work for administration as well. It's just that we would work from it.
Ask Marty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marty had a very strong opinion about how it should be. He expressed it to me a year or two ago.
Okay.
He doesn't think extracurriculars is the right word.
Not the right,
It should be both.
Yeah, but we'll talk with Marty.
Implement MTSS for all schools, actually, we're in that process. It's one that's,
Well, we have math MTSS at all schools. I mean, MTSS is in all schools.
high school.
Yeah.
So,
It would just
really
be
expanding on that, right, is what's happening. Okay. The next one was design stable financial structure. The ones underneath that was limit financial dependence on home and school. We're in that, I mean, it's listed, we're in that process. We're doing that. Create a continuous tech cycle for replacement of new equipment. You're gonna hear that at the next board meeting. Bond election, how does that,
I'm not sure if this is, bonds by themselves don't seem very stable, if you're gonna count them, but personally.
I don't know, I mean,
It's
I,
critical.
It is a financial structure, though.
please understand, I put it there. This was, it was not something that someone else, I'm the one that linked
You
it
have
there.
it in second place.
You have it under capital outlay.
I listed it two different places,
Yeah.
purposely. But I put it here because if a bond election did occur, did happen, was passed, well, that sure does have an effect upon the rest of that financial structure. I mean, for years to come. I know, I'm fine with scratching it, but I'm just saying it was one that was identified, and it does, might be worded in a way that fits as an objective. Build a strong workers' compensation program. There's several, I think, that had listed that. Increase grant activity. Lower student fees, which we talked about that tonight. So I don't know if we argue with any of those. Okay. Next, we will create a capital outlay plan that addresses current and future needs, contingencies. Again, update lighting, it's being done, it's in process, it's very specific. Bond election, construct safer entrances to the buildings. Those are the only ones that I thought in the whole list of items from admin and from you that really kind of fit there. We may easily find others that can tie, but those are the ones that, from the pool, that fit in that spot.
And because of our discussion tonight, should we add HVAC to this, since we're looking, I mean, it's not listed there, but it is clearly a,
It clearly is, and it's
And it
so,
clearly
we
enhances.
so much want to add something right now, but we're adding nothing right
okay,
now.
it's too bad, 'cause that's one of the, it'd be
It won't be
nice
lost, Paul, I promise. HVAC's
already-
not going to be forgotten.
You'd get a point.
Now, what about the one we're talking about with the, will that be captured somehow in this, or is that?
Oh, it needs to be actually worded in there. I mean, it needs to be identified. It's just that I didn't, you know, how long we could be here if we're trying to add. I just was trying to work from things and just say, either it stays or we change
I
it.
think we all know and discussed it that day that both of those really kind of tied into that initial goal.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, you know, the HVAC system, I mean, everything that we discussed the capital outlay needs, we kind of grouped a bunch of stuff, and then we just called it capital outlay.
Yeah.
All right,
You
yeah,
know?
I think we all was with you.
Yeah.
And we discussed a future plan, you know, I mean, I think when we designed the goal, we actually put some of that in there.
We collapsed. I think you're right. It's okay.
Okay, we're on D. We will foster excellent relations with community members and other organizations, arrange for collaborative meetings. Actually trying to do that. There's more than have been. I think it fits there. It would be good to engage community members and link to legislators.
Isn't that,
I guess I was thinking collaborative meetings being,
Oh, so it'd be like meeting in 4 days, but potential.
yeah. I could see how all three do tie together,
But number
maybe.
10 then is work with educational institutions.
Oh, well, I guess I could do that.
And to me, those are subcategories, 2, 3, and 10 are subcategories of.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. I don't know if I'm right.
I'll link them together. We want as few objectives as possible
That's what I
too.
think they're
You
part of
don't
that
want,
objective.
you don't want a dozen if you don't have to. If you can still be successful with that goal. So, okay. I'll link 2, 3, and 10 together then. Provide transparency with district technology and communicate with other educational institutions and tech businesses.
This, the first part of that, how does that differ significantly from integrating the technology plan? Or is, I mean, having a technology
The
plan.
second half of it is part of collaborative meetings too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we've got the transparency, having an integrated plan that we're out there with folks, like, we talk about it here, and we have the tech buying plan that's coming up, as we mentioned earlier.
It could be part of 2, 3, 10.
I think it's, yeah, I think the first sentence, we're actually,
Okay.
the first half of that, first column, we have it captured, we have it captured in several places.
Connection with local media.
They're here. Well, you've been doing the Eagle and all the rest, doing the TV spots.
Emails sent out to all parents.
What does that mean?
Remember, I,
It almost sounds like 5 and 6 and 7 are all in communication piece. So maybe lump those together for communication.
I'm fine with that.
We could just group them all under 8.
Educate the community.
Well, then you have parents. What about all district constituents?
I'm fine with, I like the idea of putting all of those together and wording it a different way that 5, 6, 7, and 8 can work, together. Okay. Understand our board policies. Now, the difference there is, but sometimes we get away from just studying board policies unless, of course, there's a problem. You roll around to some issues and then all of a sudden you're really interested in that particular board policy. But that's what I'm thinking, whoever put that down, and understand our board policies.
Such a good
But
read.
maybe it's because I'm not.
But
It's such a good
I
read.
think it's the
don't you
levels
know?
they, parents who are, and we get caught in a loophole.
well, now,
So is it more about communicating our board?
I bet it is. I mean, if you think about that, if you took only 5 policies a year to study them, and not necessarily tear them apart and spend 2 hours trying to, but I mean, if you did just 15 minutes, and I don't know who put that down, but I'm running with it just to say, if you spent 15 minutes of a board meeting, and those individuals that may be watching, those people that they would see that there is an attempt to have a better understanding, not just by the board, but also by the public, of what those policies end up, and what is the board's job.
Right.
Your main job is policy. That is the main job.
And I'll suggest if you want to take a process with that, we have the university, we have all our policies, which are huge, enormous, but we have a cycle where we have a time period where it must come back up for us to reconsider and change. Now, we do have what KASB sends to us, which are different because of change of law. We could go back through and say, here's the cycle, this one will review 3 years from now. That way we have a continuous sunset or revision, that even if we make no revisions, we at least have to renew the policy. And that might be a consideration.
Okay. So leave it, but maybe change wording a bit.
Yeah, and then I think it flows with the, well,
With which one?
I was about to say it's not part of communication then, and so it would be one of our communication.
But not for switching, it's more.
But now we're doing a little bit bigger, okay.
Yeah.
And that's an operational aspect of that district. It's not really.
Then number 11, create a culture of collaboration within the district system. Actually, that's not even, if you read the goal, relations with community members, yeah. So maybe it doesn't even fit. Okay. And the last goal, we will provide appropriate resources to ensure optimal teacher-to-student ratios. Someone had listed lower to 18 counselor per school, more ELL help, get rid of block scheduling. Those are 4 that kind of tied to that. I take any of your ideas or thoughts on those 4. Very specific.
Lower to 18 was not what we discussed previously. So that's not in line with what we had discussed previously.
That's been brought up, I think that probably my staff, I've heard that number thrown around before.
Well, this had to be a board member or an administrator that threw that out, which I would gather that there's some administrator who would love to have 18 as the high number. But even if that was altered, is there a number? I mean, we do work from numbers, so maybe if it was altered, we have that as a consideration. I mean, do we work from a number now?
Well, that's-
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but it says optimal teacher-to-student ratios, and is that number the same for every grade band? Is it the same for like a laboratory setting?
No.
We don't want to do.
And
So
that's
it
why
says
this would have to be,
18, I'm not sure is the,
okay, I'm not looking at it just as it states lower to 18. I'm looking at it, does it need to be an objective that can be worked from and fleshed out?
yes.
And you end up,
yeah,
About research-based.
That
Research-based.
and that's,
But that's kind of that's in your goal, you usually stay on this.
Well,
If you have ensure optimal teachers too, that's about getting the education.
okay.
yeah, because now that's
Well,
right.
but then, do we just strike this one?
Well, I think we will still tend to the goal.
Right.
It's just a matter, is that a weak goal? Or do we create a completely different goal, that tries to, or, excuse me, objective that links to that particular goal? I think it's a weak objective, probably needs to be completely, okay. Counselor per school. Why was it changed in the first place? It was a money issue, I understand, not anything else but a money issue. So perhaps it could stand on its own?
Well, it probably should.
But there again,
No, I think it should, because then if there's the push for the micro-credentialing that is being pushed, we may have multiple mini counselors at every single one.
We have a counselor per school, it's just not full-time.
Yeah,
And
and maybe
that's-
full-time.
and that's what they- I know that's what they're referring to.
It's a
Yeah.
part-time.
There is a counselor, but
They're saying
at the
full.
elementary, and then
I think that's one too, if we want to put full-time, because I think it's going to be pushed on us as something we need to
Okay.
be moving towards.
I agree with the objective, it doesn't fit your goal.
Yeah, how does it, that's my question, is it?
That's
I go back up
Here.
to quality education or
It's
some
probably
other
quality.
goal, but
Oh, I know how it works there. We don't think of it this way, Luke. A lot of people don't. But when you're saying that optimal teacher-to-student ratio, not just talking about classroom. You're talking about that teacher to student, could be as well, someone could be talking about librarian to students. It could be a matter, it could be any of those specials that tie to it. And that's different than that classroom number.
So maybe certified personnel.
Yeah.
teachers.
It's
probably
really
the
certified
best they can
personnel is the
go.
optimal number.
Optimal.
I'm sure that's where they're coming from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe certified personnel.
Well,
So
I'll
let's clean that up.
I'll just say alter it. It should stay. We could probably make some changes. What about ELL help?
Does that fall under this, yeah?
Yeah, Raj,
You
is-
know, it's all depend on funding, you know. Right now, funding is like, we don't get even funding for a para, full-time para. So whatever we support, that comes from general ed budget.
We kind of look at numbers, and if we have an increase in numbers, it's hard to justify an increase in expenditure, because especially when we're not really generating any more funds, so that's kind of where we've been looking, but we'll continue to look at numbers.
That again is an optimal program.
Yeah, to me, it's more like council.
So maybe optimal teacher to student, maybe you're right, maybe that isn't quite. Maybe
Again,
you're right.
yeah, both counselor or ELM, depend on how much our budget actually.
Special ed.
Okay. And I'd never heard this one before, it really caught me off guard, get rid of block scheduling.
Where did, is that?
Well, then,
where
if you
did-
don't remember it, then it came from some administrator.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But it's odd that, has that been an item in the recent past?
It's been tossed out. I don't know that we're talking
Well,
about
could
getting rid
free
of
up
it.
resources maybe, I don't know, I mean, that hasn't been something that's been.
The optimal teacher to student ratio, by getting rid of it, we would have a better chance of getting optimal teacher, well,
Program resources, I mean, there's a, depending on how you do the schedule.
okay.
Figure out something.
Well, I'll put a big question
But I
mark,
don't-
maybe
I
two.
think we can
Okay,
scratch
3.
two out of the things.
Okay. There is no doubt that some of these goals need more objectives that really fit that, and we will work from that. And I appreciate your tolerance, because there was 30 minutes of your involvement of talking about, but I'll also say that the nice thing about having a Board of Education that is actually talking about standards, objectives, a policy, those particular items is really great compared to always focusing on buses or buildings or roofs, because part of the education, I mean, big part of education is dealing with really the nuts and bolts that's this, that we're going to be trying to improve. So I will work off of this, have another document for you, but in the meantime, try to end up getting administrators' assistance in trying to get this identified. I really do want a timeline with what we can put out as soon as possible, within just the next month. I'd like to have something in the different buildings that identify that they can see that, and then we would change those out probably quarterly, and try to let them see how it's actually making changes over time of what we're dealing with. A number of them we're working on right now, which makes me very pleased that what you identified as goals is that should be what our agenda is about. That should be what our board meetings are about. It should link to this. So,
I think to the timing of us fleshing this out and maybe getting some of the information back from the surveys we're sending out, it would be interesting to see if that's the perception out there as well, how it aligns to our goals. The KISA, I know you said that out in your weekly thing, but would you rather than that information? So that we always keep these in mind. So it's not like we have our goals here, we have our accreditation.
Right.
We gotta make sure they're
try to put them together.
parallel.
Right. And I'll say one thing on that, Paul, with what you were saying earlier as far as academics and how does KISA fit into it. The perception survey information could come back, that even the perception survey focuses heavily by teacher, student, parent on behavior and emotion. It could be that piece. Well, if we as a community identify that piece, then we should have it as definitely one of the priorities that we're working on. That should be definitely considered.
Especially in the timeline.
Yeah.
And the metrics of success. Just not such a.
Any other questions from the executive tonight? Next item, other topics for discussion.